When? Great. Thanks. I'd like to call a special meeting in Narragansett Planning Board to order Monday, November 27th, 2023. Mr. Friday.
Present.
Mr. Brunetto.
Present.
Mr. Brady. Here. Dr. O'Neill. Here. Mr. Fleming, I'm here, 5-0. First item on the agenda, regular agenda, subdivision land development regulations amendments, hearing of text revisions drafted to comply with recent General Assembly statutory changes, board deliberations and possible action to make recommendation to council, town council. The board's heard the subdivision on a number of meetings. Our requirement is to have a public hearing, so we've had public meetings. This is a public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak, they need to be sworn in by the stenographer, but we're required to have a public hearing. Mr. DeLuca is going to summarize. This board's been through it, but he's going to summarize for the public the subdivision, highlights of the subdivision laws that were passed by the General Assembly. And then hopefully, if everything's in order, we can move it to the council and they can set their public hearing. So, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a fairly short slideshow for you, and I'm going to, is it on now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Dan, can you hit the volume just a bit? I've never been accused of being quiet. Okay. So I'm going to breeze through a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about. You guys have seen this a couple of times. I am going to slow down and give a little detail on certain elements of it. So, so as you can see, the slide up there shows all the legislation that passed last spring, and House Bill 6061A is the one we're responding to, which amends the subdivision and land development enabling law. A lot of what we're talking about tonight is mandatory language. So what we did, what I'm going to be doing is referring to the different chapters of the regulations and the subsections within which that within the chapter, which have been amended. So you see up there on the screen, Section 1, the authority and intent. There were only two sections amended, C and E. So A and B were not amended. A and B is authority, B is purpose, not amended. C is construction and intent, and what we've done is we've added references to comprehensive permits, unified development review, and development plan review to the description of the areas of authority of this board. So it just said subdivision before, now it incorporates those. Subsection E has to do with vested rights. And what we're doing is, this is just housekeeping in a way. We have to put a new date of approval in when the time comes. So right now it has the old date, which was 1995. So it just says December XX 2023 at the moment. It'll stay like that until the town council approves it. Section 2, there are several definitions that have been either revised or amended or added. In this particular chapter, we revised, there were 10 definitions revised, 2 were deleted, 5 new definitions added from the state law, 11 definitions added from the old state law. And this is somewhat of housekeeping cleanup also. These are definitions that since 1995, the General Assembly has added definitions and the town did not incorporate them. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of sweep those all in with the new definitions.
The new law didn't negate something that happened over the past 3 years.
No.
They're all consistent, right?
Although the new law did change, the new law negates the administrative subdivision definition, but then it puts administrative subdivision under the definition of subdivision.
Okay.
So it revised subdivision, it put administrative under that, and it deletes administrative subdivision.
But bottom line on these definitions is what the law is requiring, right?
Yes.
That we put in, okay.
And 46 of the definitions were left unchanged.
Okay.
So if you want to go through any of them, I'd be happy to. The only ones that,
Well, I think the subcommittee went through it and the board
We already
went through
did it.
We already did it.
right. And the ones that were deleted, like I said, was administrative subdivision and re-subdivision. They took away that term re-subdivision. All that gets incorporated as subsets to the definition of the word subdivision. So, and as you can see, the remainder are up there, and you've all seen all of those. Moving to section 3, which is general requirements. Only 2 sections were revised. Section A, the required findings. We talked about this. As you recall, I had suggested that lots that don't meet zoning, underlying zoning, could be approved for utilities. The only times that lots can be approved that don't meet zoning are for open space and conservation. But I thought we would add utility lots because that happens. Sewer pump stations, that kind of thing can happen. So that's just a pragmatic addition. It's not required by the law. The second change was to update the wetland and flood zone standards in subsection C entitled Land Unsuitable for Development. This is just a correction of language. Again, not required by state law, but we took this opportunity to do something to clean it up. Section 4 is where we get a little bit busy. This is for special requirements. And you can see I've got the page numbers there. So we've drafted revisions to sections A, B, C, D, F, and G, not E. Subsection A has to do with residential clusters. As you recall, we changed the prioritization so that cluster now will be preferred over conventional layout. Current language indicates that conventional layout was preferred, and you'd have to justify
Excuse me,
cluster.
Mike. Didn't we decide to make cluster required unless they can prove a traditional, conventional is more appropriate?
It actually, the term is required.
Okay, so it's not preferred.
No, I probably should have used a different verb there.
Okay.
It should say cluster is required over conventional layout.
All right.
That's the language we have in there. And item B, comprehensive permit applications, we inserted detailed standards for the submittal, certification, and processing of comprehensive permits. That's 6 pages, page 21 through 27. I will not go through that. You've all reviewed it.
Wait a minute, I have a question.
Yeah, so, Chairman,
Yep,
on this, on page 24,
Oh, thanks.
page 24 of the comp permit.
yeah, so number 3C, requires a subsidy of not less than 30 years. Elsewhere in the ordinance, we changed it to 99 years, and I suggest we do the same here.
Did we change it everywhere to 99?
We may have,
Did we,
maybe just
Rupert?
didn't get it
Do you
picked up
remember?
here.
I thought we had,
Okay.
but I didn't, I caught this when I was reviewing
Well,
it again.
I would say whatever's consistent with what we did, we should do.
Okay, I'll double check
I
back on
don't think
that.
it should be different.
Yep. Okay. And as you know, that we did insert a subsection in this section on what minor changes could be approved administratively. We all discussed that at your working meeting last time around. There were 6 items available for revision. If you recall, relocation of lot lines, which doesn't result in adjustments to the lots or the number of lots. Reconfiguration of lots that doesn't result in additional units. Reorientation of roadways. Reconfiguration of open space. Reconfiguration of drainage facilities. Relocation of easements. All of those come with a caveat as long as they don't make any significant changes to the remainder of the development. So that's in there. Moving on to item C, which is on page 27. This is the section on minor subdivisions involving no street creation. We updated the text, increasing all the references to minor subdivisions from 5 to 9 lots. And what I mean by that, to be clear, is minor subdivisions today can only be up to 5 lots. When you get to 6 lots, that triggers major subdivision review. After January 1st, 9 lots will be the maximum for minor subdivision, and 10 lots would trigger the process of major subdivision review. So that was, so you, as you look through pages 27, 28, 29, you can see all the highlighted areas where the word 9 is there and the number, word 5 or number 5 is scratched out. Moving on to item D, minor subdivisions of street creation, with street creation or extension. Again, the same thing. We updated the references to maximum number of lots in a minor to be 9 as opposed to 5 as it exists today. That's on page 30. The next two are fairly lengthy sections. Section F is a new section for development plan review. As you recall, this is enabled by the recent change in the law, and it is made mandatory for the town to utilize. So we inserted detailed standards for classification, submittal, certification, and processing of applications that qualify for development plan review, and that is about 6.5 pages. There were 6 criteria set forth under the state law: a change in use at the property where no extensive construction is sought, an adaptive reuse project located in a commercial zone where no extensive exterior construction is sought, an adaptive reuse project located in a residential zone which results in less than 9 residential units, development in a designated urban growth center, institutional development design review for educational hospital facilities, or development in a historic district. So we put in all the criteria. We addressed criteria for each of those sorts of developments. The distinction between administrative development plan review and formal development plan review was based on simplicity in the application, which would lead it into just being administratively approved, or a complex application which would have a mix of uses, which would trigger the formal review by the planning board. So that's the shorthand version of the difference between administrative DPR and formal DPR. That brings us up to page 38. Give me a moment while I find my way. And on 38, we do item G, which is Unified Development Review. As you recall, Unified Development Review is a process that's been inserted into the law and made mandatory that requires the planning board to act as the zoning board in cases when either a development plan or a development plan reviewed plan or a subdivision or a land development requires some relief that is not approvable by modification, which we discussed, as you know, last time around with the zoning law. And in that case, you would act, this board would act in the stead of the zoning board to consider and potentially grant relief for setbacks or other dimensional components of the zoning ordinance. So that section is
So Mike,
4
excuse me,
pages long.
in any case we've had over the years where the subdivision stops at a certain point, maybe after master plan, and then has to go to the zoning board for some kind of dimensional relief or relief from coastal
Right.
feature or something, that stays with the planning board.
That would stay with
In
the
those
planning
cases.
board for minors and for majors and for comp permits, which you already have that authority, and for development plan review projects. So, so you've got 3.5 pages of standards there.
Okay.
That brings us to section 5, which is the procedure for review and approval of plats and plans. 4 subsections were amended: C3, C4, D1, and D2. So C3 is on page 44. And, it starts on the bottom of page 44 and carries over. Minor land development and minor subdivision. This is text amendments to the procedures for approval of minor subdivisions and land developments, including categories of allowed waivers, modifications, and changes to plats or plans. we did discuss what could be approved administratively in the way of relief, and the 7 items we came down to were sidewalk requirements, street tree requirements, street lighting, open space or fee in lieu requirement, monumentation requirements, curbing requirements, and landscaping requirements. All other modifications that would be sought on minor land developments or subdivisions would have to come through the planning board for relief. Moving over to C4, which is page 48. Same general approach. This is major land developments and major subdivisions, and the process for the procedure for approval of major land developments and subdivisions, including the categories of allowed waivers and modifications. That takes us to page 55. This is the section, Mr. Chairman, I alluded to a little earlier. In this section, C4, there are some cross-references to other sections of the code that I did not get a chance to insert, such as under 4C, C4C, the administrative officer may combine review stages and modify, but only the planning board may waive submission requirements as specified in, and then there's a section that needs to be put in there. That would be section 8 of the subdivision regulations. So I'm going to insert that in. Further down, there's reference to section 11.7. I'll insert that in. But I have to admit, on pages 50 and 51 and 52, there are section cross-references that I did not get to insert in there, and I will put those together. There's no change in content. All there is cross-reference to the appropriate section that is related to that commentary.
Right, that language has already been established, and you're
Yes.
just referencing it.
I need to look up those references.
All right.
My apologies for missing that.
No, that's fine.
So that takes us to
D1.
D1, which is on page 55. This has to do with precedence of approval between planning board and other local permitting authorities. And most specifically, applications that do not qualify for unified development review. So we needed to add text to that to clarify what the process is. It's very simple. And as you can see there, it's a fairly short reference. And at the bottom of the page, D2, precedence of approval yet again. For applications that do qualify for unified development review, we added some text to clarify what the appropriate process is. And you can see that there, it's a single sentence. So now we're on section 5 a moment ago, we're skipping over to section 8. Sections 6 and 7 are virtually unchanged
Okay.
in the subdivision regulations. And if you want, I'll tell you what those chapters are. Section 6 is recording of plats and plans. Section 7 is guarantees of public improvements. So I'll keep that right there. So here we are on section 8, waivers and modifications. And we added text to set standards for waivers and modifications of subdivisions and land developments, subject to development plan review. So as you can see, there's about a page there of text with regard to waivers and modifications. I was looking through the regulations this afternoon, highlighting what comments I'd make tonight. And there was one section that was eliminated that I think we need to reinsert. And this has to do with reinstatement of applications. We have had, that has been in the code for as long as we've had the regulations. And I do believe that, I don't believe that anything in the mandatory text from the state addresses reinstatement. So one thing I would like to do is to reinsert the paragraph, it's actually, I think, 2 paragraphs, about the process of reinstatement of applications, and it would be verbatim from existing regulations.
Right, because there's nothing in the new law that
Right.
would, so we took it out. And we probably-
Yeah, I think what we
right.
did was we wiped out that entire chapter, it's a very short chapter, as you know. We inserted the required text, but
But
we
the reinstatement
left out
wasn't
the
there.
reinstatement
Okay.
text.
Everybody all right with that?
I can read the text to you if you want
No.
to see it.
I think it's fine. It's been in effect forever.
All righty. Moving over to, so now we skip section 9 and 10, which are, 9 is enforcement and penalties, 10 is adoption and amendment. So in 11, we have administration of the regulations. That brings us to page 66 of your package. And as you can see, we updated the definition of the administrative officer, and after lengthy discussion, if you recall, we did change the administrative fees to those fee amounts that you had suggested. Since we had not changed them since the early 1990s, I thought that was vastly overdue.
So Mike, as a suggestion, when you go to the council with this presentation, you may want to add those fees to
Yeah.
the slide.
Oh, yeah, I think the presentation's going to be a little bit lengthier than yours.
Okay. That's true. You guys be sure to be there, okay?
So, section 12,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, section 12 starts on page 68 of your packet, and this has to do with appeals. And this is verbatim from the law. It adds text directing appeals of decisions of the administrative officer to the Superior Court. Previously, appeals of decisions made by the planning board or the administrative officer as it related to subdivisions or land development projects would have been appealed to the zoning board of review. Now, anything that comes from the administrative officer goes directly to Superior Court. I'm not sure if any particular decisions of this board would go to the zoning board at all. There's uncertainty in the clarity of the state law.
Joe's got a question. Joe, you might want to use the mic.
Aside, but is the Superior Court ready for this? Is the,
Who knows? No, I will say this, in a separate bill, the General Assembly did establish that there will be a land court calendar built into Superior Court after January 1st. Did I get that wrong, Steve? Yeah. Go ahead.
So there's no more plating board of review. So any decision from the planning board goes directly to Superior Court. There's a question whether the issue regarding the administrative officer goes to Superior Court or goes to the zoning board as an administrative. And remember, we had this conversation whether the administrative officer can make a non-planning board a non-planning decision that would bring it to the zoning board. Most likely, it would go to Superior Court.
I looked up the enabling law.
But definitely the planning, and nothing from the planning board goes there.
So Steve,
Okay.
if there's an administrative decision that's appealed, at that point, someone will decide where it goes?
It's, the law was unclear
Right.
whether, so in other words, if it's, say, for instance, I guess that if you can appeal, say, a final, the preliminary plan, the final plan approval, that's administrative.
Right.
So if it's an administrative approval in the final plan, that's not a, something is not, that's not a.
That's a planning decision.
That's really a planning
Yeah.
decision. So
Yeah.
I think that decision would go to
Go to
Superior
court.
Court. However, if the administrative officer says something isn't complete, that's more of an administrative decision.
Right.
And I think the law was unclear as far as whether that goes to Superior Court or whether it goes to, or whether that would go to the zoning board of review, because it's really a technical issue.
Okay. follow you.
But haven't we had a say on completeness if Mr. DeLuca didn't think something was complete? Couldn't the applicant come to us and
Well,
make a case for it?
Not, say, for instance, I'm going final plan. Final plan is exclusively administrative.
Okay,
Say, for instance, there's a condition on the final plan, and the administrative officer says, not recording this because it's not complete because you haven't done X.
I get it.
Because there's no, you can no longer push it to you guys. So you would be able to make that determination of whether something's complete on a preliminary plan.
Right.
But when it's purely an administrative officer decision, which is going to be so rare, because most people, developers, if an administrative officer says, it's on a list of conditions, you're most likely going to provide it.
But if it's unclear, it'll be clear once someone appeals, because someone's going to have to determine.
Yeah,
who makes
correct.
the
Someone
call,
will appeal
right?
it to, appeal it to the zoning board, and then someone will say you're in the wrong forum,
Right,
or
yeah.
someone will say you appealed to Superior Court, and someone will say you missed the administrative step. Or the legislature will, because they're going to come
Be
back.
clarified.
They're going to come back with some changes, fixes, et cetera. Like when Microsoft patches, things. They'll get a patch in this June session.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
All right, so, but that language is all, as you can see, it's all underlined. It's all language right out of the law. And then we go from that, we skip sections 13 and 14. Give me a second, I'll tell you what those are. Design of public improvements and construction methods and specifications, very dry information. The last section is section 15, the checklists, and they provided us with a complete rewrite of the checklists for minor subdivision, major subdivisions, land developments, and checklists for projects subject to development plan review. And that takes up a lot of pages, as you can see there. I was reviewing those checklists today. The state law requires that the checklist be updated. The checklists that we got were the ones provided by the League of Cities and Towns after they had worked with Rhode Island Housing and a consultant working with Rhode Island Housing. So the checklists you have in your packet are the ones that are what they call the template checklists. And they need to be reviewed and fine-tuned and tailored to each city and town. So the checklists look pretty good. I found them to be very extensive. The checklists we have in our subdivision regulations today are outdated and need to be replaced anyway. So I'm willing to work with them, but I do think that over the course of the early part of the winter, I will be rereading them and possibly coming back to you to do some fine-tuning on them.
And then Steve, would that go back to the council?
Yeah.
A checklist, yeah, I mean, if it's in our ordinance, if it's just an administrative, checklists.
No, they're in the.
Yeah, they're in the regs,
ordinance.
so if they're in the regs, it's got
So
to
if
go
you
back to the
update the
council.
regs, then it's got to go through planning and council.
Yeah, and what they did with the checklist, although they did a great job formatting them out, two things kind of concerned me. I was mentioning one to Rupert, and that is that they only give you one date box to fill in the date of receipt. But the checklist says formatted are intended to carry through from pre-application all the way through to final as one single checklist. They put several different approval boxes. So one of the things we absolutely have to have is a separate box for when the dates are of individual steps coming into us. So it's a formatting issue. It's not the end of the world. It can be cleaned up. And then at the bottom of every subsection of each checklist, they put in a placeholder that says, add anything specific to the local regulations. Well, I haven't had a chance to do that. So we will take these checklists as they've been provided, and I will likely be coming back to you in the next couple of months with some updates and revisions that can fine-tune it for us. I believe that's it.
All right, thank you, Michael. We'll go to the public first. Anyone in the public have any comments on the subdivision regulations? Not here for the subdivision, okay. You need to be sworn in, sir.
Please raise your right hand.
Is that mic on, Mr. Callahan? Is the mic on? Is the red light on?
Now it is.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, now it is. Thank you. I was just, I didn't come to testify tonight, but as I watched the presentation, one thing occurred to me. Right now, the requirements for new subdivisions, the inclusion of affordable housing, the number of lots that triggers, is it tied to the minor versus major, or is it just standalone at 6?
If you don't mind, Mr. Callahan.
Sorry, we were,
Mr.
No, that's quite
Marcello
all
and I
right.
had a little
That's quite all
sidebar
right.
going. Would you mind repeating?
No,
I
not
apologize.
at all. For the requirements for inclusion of affordable housing and new developments, I recollect that number is 6 lots, if I'm not mistaken. Is it was not tied to minor versus major subdivision?
Well, no, it was tied to a development of 6 or more units.
Right. So,
Correct.
okay, so the changing of the minor from 5 to 9 doesn't affect that number of 6 at all?
It does.
How so?
Well, as it's written today, no, it wouldn't, because the number in the zoning ordinance is 6.
Right.
But if you were to look at the proposed zone text for the zoning changes that are being brought to the town council, you'll see that we're suggesting that inclusionary zoning subchapter of 7A in the zoning code be eliminated completely. And it's not because we're opposed to inclusionary zoning. It's because the formula dictated by the General Assembly makes it an unwieldy and untenable process to undertake. The numbers will force the town to quadruple density allowance. So if that gets approved by the council, with that section being deleted, we will have no inclusionary zoning until such time as either the state changes that standard or the town council decides it's okay with living with that standard.
Okay, and so I guess then the next logical question from my vantage point is, do you have a sense, Mike, for how many towns other than Narragansett would be eliminating inclusionary zoning as a result of?
I can't give you a documented number, but I know that colleagues of mine have said that they were doing the same thing we were doing in telephone conversations, emails, and whatever.
And is there, are there new provisions that are being, or as part of the amendments that are going forward, that could be pointed to as encouraging affordable housing going forward, as opposed to just eliminating inclusionary zoning?
Well, yeah.
the two things. One is,
Yeah.
as Mike pointed out in a meeting today, since we've had inclusionary zoning on our books, it's never been used in the town of Narragansett, ever.
Part of it was, there was a threshold you had to meet, first of all.
But the second thing is the new affordable comprehensive permit statute basically makes it quite a bit easier for a developer to come forward, gives set density bonuses, makes the whole process more streamlined, gets rid of the master plan approval, shifts many of the findings to pure state law. You can't make environmental findings anymore, it'll just be whatever DEM says. So on the comprehensive permit statute, that'll streamline a comp permit in affordable housing quite a bit. And more importantly, it gives density bonuses for the more affordable housing units you have, the higher the density bonus is. So that encourages even more
So that's
affordable
the
housing.
language that's going in as a
That's
result of
the-
the
yeah,
law,
that's-
as a law that was enacted?
Yeah, exactly. That's all going in now.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Anyone else? No thanks? Okay. So I have a question. If we, this is procedural, if we move this, recommended to the council, what's the expected pathway for them to get to this? They have to set it down for a public hearing?
Yes, they'd have to set it down
So
for a
does-
public hearing, and it would go on for scheduling a public hearing in December. The scheduling part would happen in December, and the public hearing might
In
happen
January.
late December or in January.
Well, but then there has to be 2 readings, so this isn't going to get enacted by January 1, but I guess the question for Steve is, but this is state law, so it is enacted by January 1.
Correct, but I mean, again, we don't, that's maybe Mark Davis or Evans.
Yeah, it might
whether- I
happen.
mean,
It might
it could
happen.
happen, but the bottom
Could
line
happen.
is, this is all mandatory state changes. If we sat around and did nothing, this would be
Correct.
the new law on January 1st anyway. We would just have an out-of-date code, which would,
And there'd be confusion because our ordinance wouldn't be updated.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have anything you want to add to this? We've been through it. Thanks again to everybody for working on this, especially staff, but also the board.
No, I think the board did a great job, not only with this, but with the zoning ordinances that you drafted. I think we're the only town in the state where the board actually got in and got their hands dirty and got involved with this stuff to the level you guys did. So, I think
But
what's
don't they
really great
need to-
about that
Don't they
is,
need to make recommendations by state law in every town to their
no,
council?
but the fact that you actually
Oh, worked on
participated
it.
directly
Actually
in the
did something.
workshops
Yeah, yeah.
and did the actual work in writing and formatting, helping the staff to keep abreast of it and hopefully meet these deadlines. The subdivision deadline, we're going to miss by a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, but it's going to be in, as Steve indicated. It's in, okay. So I need a motion, unless anyone else has a comment, I need a motion to recommend what's been presented, what we've approved, plus your revisions. What?
You got to close the hearing first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would move to close the hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the hearing by Mr. Brady, seconded by Dr. O'Neill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, thank you. And then a motion to the council to recommend adoption of what we put together with the, I guess, with the items that Mr. DeLuca indicated still have to be clarified.
There's just that one subsection on reinstatement, and then there's which is going, I'm just going to lift verbatim,
That's fine.
and then the other cross-references.
Okay.
All right, I would move the amendments to the subdivision and land use regulations as to meet state regulations, with the caveat that some exceptions will be coming later, be moved to the town council for approval.
I'll second that.
So the motion by Mr. Brady, seconded by Mr. Friday. All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thanks so much, everyone, on that. Okay. Next is I'm going to move up the third item, recommendation to Town Council Hazard Mitigation Plan 2023 Progress Report. Board review and possible action to make recommendations to the Town Council. Ms. Sabo? Thank you, Alicia.
Good evening. Today you have before you the progress report for the year 2023 that staff has made.
Your microphone?
That staff has made this year on the action items in our hazard mitigation plan. As you're all familiar with, every year the town updates it's referred to the strategy for reducing risks from natural hazards in Narragansett, Rhode Island, locally referred to as the hazard mitigation plan. It's a requirement for the town to have an updated plan through FEMA, and it helps us with other programs that we have in town, namely the community rating system program. So what you have before you is the update, so you can see over the years the progress that we've made on some of the individual action items. I'm not going to go through all of these. We did have our local hazard mitigation committee is comprised of myself and Mr. DeLuca, the police chief, the fire chief, the town manager, the director of DPW, and the building official, finance director, IT. So we have brought all of those folks together, and they've done their yearly update. I do want to just point out 3 items that I think are pretty important, are worthy of mentioning. The 2023 update for action item 7, which is the Scarborough wastewater groin rehabilitation. I mentioned this one probably because many of you might have seen the work happening out on the groin where the heavy machinery is just, looks like it's out there at high tide floating, but they've been repairing the groin out in front of the wastewater treatment facility to help further protect it from flooding. If you go to action item 11, causeways, the town has been actively seeking funding for doing a feasibility study for raising of the Harbor Island Causeway. That's a Foddering Farm Road that accesses somewhere between 325 and 350 homes, and it's the only point of ingress and egress for that island. And the road does flood regularly, certainly at king tides, high tides. Trying to think of the last big storm we had, the one 2023, December 23rd, 2022, a lot of places flooded, including that causeway. So we did receive some money a couple of years ago to do the beginning of a study on that, and the town has been actively applying for grants. We do have a grant pending right now with FEMA, and we have another grant out as well. So you can see the progress that's been made in the last 5 years on that. Then another one I thought that was worthy of mentioning is action.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Go ahead, Joe.
The material that was presented to us in terms of one of those specific causeways, the one out to Harbor Island?
That's the one. The Harbor Island Causeway is the one we're looking at right now.
Yep. So where is that? 3 years out, 5 years out?
Well, we did receive a grant a couple of years ago to do a feasibility study, and we asked them to come up with 3 alternatives, and the town was going to choose one. We narrowed it down to 2, and now we're asking to go out for a scoping study for those 2, which would include, depending upon which source of funding you're looking at, it would include the resiliency for the roadway to be able to access the island, but also because that causeway is in such a environmentally sensitive area, it would also include working with those environmental constraints to make the situation better. Long Cove does not, it doesn't drain properly. There's some issues, yeah, environmentally with the water quality in Long Cove, and we're looking at, either culverting or, in a perfect world, a bridge would be great, maybe, So we're asking for funding right now to sort of help us narrow that down, those 2 points, the resiliency and the environment. The third one, I'm sorry, does anyone have any other questions on that?
Go ahead.
So the third one I want to point out, which I think is really important, is action item 15. So we hadn't had any progress on this one, or we really didn't have anything to report for policy for rebuilding, but I thought it was important to mention the building inspector, the building official added in an update for this. And what it is that the building department was evaluated for the building code effectiveness grading schedule, so referred to in-house as BSEGs. And it's a rating system that the town has reviewed upon. So we recently asked for that review, and we received a 3 for residential properties and a 3 for commercial properties, and that's the highest rating that any municipality in Rhode Island can get. What that means is, I know some of you are familiar, and for the benefit of the audience, that the town participates in the community rating system, whereby anyone who has a flood insurance policy from a federally backed loan in a flood zone, in a special flood hazard area, is required to have flood insurance. And the town right now, because of the steps that we take that go above and beyond what's required, it's through the community rating system, we get a better rating. Everyone in town who pays insurance gets a better rating. They actually get 15% discount. One of the things that was holding us back from a better discount was this BSEGs rating. So we now have the appropriate BSEGs rating, so should, time and resources permit, that the town can actually apply for a modification to that CRS rating, and we could get to theoretically, we get to a rating of 6, which is a 20% discount for everyone in town who has flood insurance in a special flood hazard area.
And that's as good as we can get? The 6?
Right now it is.
Oh.
That's as good as anyone has gotten. There's one other municipality in the state that has it, and
That has a 6?
we're going for it. We'd like to.
Nice.
So
Go ahead.
those are the 3 things I wanted to point out. If you read through, you'll be able to see there are other interesting updates. The plan is scheduled right now. We are working with a consultant to update the hazard mitigation plan for this upcoming 5-year cycle. And you'll be seeing that again at some point in the near future, 6 to 8 weeks or so.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone in the public on the hazard mitigation study? No? So this is to be referred to the council?
Yes, please. And then the council will receive, place on file, they can ask questions. It's a requirement, it's one of the requirements
It's
of,
generally not a presentation, it's just,
last year we did a
submitted to-
presentation.
okay.
So move that,
Go ahead, Joe.
so move the material before us, town council for action, well, presentation and action.
A motion by Dr. O'Neill for referral to the council, second by Mr. Brady. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Sabo. And our last item on the agenda is a recommendation to town council, zoning text amendment, definition, section 2.2 definitions, amend the definition of household, board review, deliberation, possible action to make recommendations to the town council. You're in receipt of staff summary by Mr. DeLuca. It's obviously an issue that we've been back and forth with for many years. Mr. Marcella, did you have, I think you indicated you had something to pass on from the other lawyers in town?
Yeah, correct. So the solicitor and the council, this is the law that's working on behalf of the town in various litigation cases going on right now. It was their legal opinion that due to equal protection clause in the Constitution, that both the student ordinance, the number in the student ordinance and the number in the unrelated ordinance needed to match, and therefore that would solve the any potential equal protection argument that a defendant may have in any future litigation. So that's how this matter came forward. It was basically a recommendation from the solicitor that the two numbers had to match, and they put forth the moving the 4 unrelated to the 3 unrelated to match the current 3 student
So
ordinance.
that's what's officially in front of us, is the
Correct.
3. So the solicitor, okay.
And that's the reason why it's in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me if I laugh, no, I don't laugh, but, I mean, this board's been saying for 5, 6 years that these numbers needed to be the same. And all of a sudden, we heard that the Providence case with the Supreme Court said they're not a protected class, but we still, many of us on this board still thought that that was bias and discrimination. And now our litigator is saying, yes, it is, under equal protection. I just wish I was a lawyer sometimes, Steve, so I would know. I can't use the discrimination word because people throw it back at me, but
That's
equal
not,
protection.
that's the equal protection has to do with the numbers, not with the student or non-student.
Okay, but there's 2 populations that we had different numbers for.
Correct.
Which was the
And-
point we
and-
were making.
And in a couple of weeks, we'll have the same number.
Okay, that's the second point of this whole discussion. But the point is, we made that point repeatedly. And now, it's just so laughable. Anyhow, can I ask just, and no one has an answer for this is probably rhetorical, why did the council not ask the planning board for its recommendation on what the right number is? Why didn't they say, it has to be the same, so tell us what you think the number should be? Instead of telling us, I want an up or down on moving the unrelated to 3. Is there any legal reason why it has to go that way? Or isn't the germane point here that they have to be the same number?
The ordinance came down, and they're asking for your recommendation on it.
That was a rhetorical answer. Okay, so the point is, we have to do an up or down on what they've asked us. My only point is the council, in my humble opinion, if they were doing their job, they would send to us and say, tell us what you think the right number is, because they have to be the same. But they're not doing, this is what we call in sales the presumptive close. This is, this is what we want, so give it to us. So anyhow, we can do whatever we want, but that's crazy. So what I'd like to do, before we go to the board, I'd like to go to the public and let people give their opinion. There's a few people here that want to speak. I'm assuming you want to speak on this issue. So normally, and tonight, we're going to limit how much time you have, I think, because there's only 3 people here, we can limit to 5 minutes each. Usually we do 3, but if you want to speak for 5 minutes, you can. So if you want to be recognized, you come up, state your name, and I'll watch the clock. Yes, ma'am. Just make sure that the mic's working, and the light's on, and yeah, there you go.
Okay. So good evening. My name is Deb Buffy, and I own the property at 19 Kingston Lane in Eastwood Look, and I think putting the numbers the same is fine. I happen to be an attorney, so I don't really understand the equal protection. I thought the Supreme Court decision on the students was a sound decision, but I have a lot of respect for counsel, so, but I strongly support, I am very appreciative. My mom and dad owned the property in Kingston Lane for years and years, and we enjoyed a wonderful quality of life for many years, and then everything went crazy. And, the students basically took over. So I'm very appreciative as my dad passed away, as I'm moving down there and retiring. I'm looking forward to the quality of life. I am in favor of bringing that number to 3, if that's what you have to do. I was very happy with the 3 students and 4 unrelated, but if legal counsel says they need to match, then I would urge that we go with the match for 3. I think we can all coexist beautifully. Students can enjoy the area, landlords can make money, and folks like me who are looking forward to retirement in this beautiful town and, continuing what my mom and dad had for so many years, we can enjoy that quality of life. So I strongly support, if you have to move the numbers to be the same, that you move to 3.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I ask?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You've owned this property since 2015, right?
My mom and dad owned the property since 1983.
Yeah.
And then my
okay.
dad died
All right.
in 21.
So in 2015, this board passed, or encouraged, and the law was passed, of 4 unrelated persons. Did it make any difference in terms of enforcement?
I'm not down in Eastwood Look full-time. I have to tell you, when I went down Halloween night, I don't even want to show you the videos of what I saw across the street from my property. The kids were in costume on top of the shed across the street, cars everywhere. It was so upsetting. What can I say?
So the number makes no difference.
Well,
It's enforcement, that's the problem.
I think the numbers, with all due respect, the numbers we need the ordinances, we need the numbers.
We
But
have an ordinance in
yeah,
place.
But we need the enforcement. I agree with you.
The number makes no difference.
Fortunately, I think the numbers do make
Oh, yeah?
a difference. You had no numbers in this town for a million years.
No, we've
Because
had
of
this
a-
number
Because of
for-
a Fortunato
We've
ridiculous
we've had this
decision.
number since 2015.
Yes, I know. I've been coming to the hearing.
And the difference it's made?
I think, there's been so much time in court fighting all these decisions that nobody can really settle down.
Thank you.
And figure it out.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Would you like to speak? State your name, please.
My name is Louise Ferrandi, sister of Councilman Ferrandi. Just to preface that, not for any reason, but this is a bit of an aside. Everybody thinks we're husband and wife, and we're not, and he doesn't, he doesn't take kindly to that. So I'm the sister. Anyway, what you said about the number not making a difference, I think that might be a philosophical decision, because when you think about it, we went through great trouble to get a 3-student ordinance, and what is happening now is landlords are renting to 3 students with an extra student as an unrelated. So to really help the enforcement, we could make it more uniform and keep it at 3. Lower the 4 unrelated to the 3, so it would be more uniform.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No one else? Thank you. So, board members, I want to hear from the board. We've been around this forever and ever. Michael's got a staff summary, which Michael gets into the comp plan connection and consistency, and we've been through this whenever we've recommended 3 student, 4 unrelated, whatever. But I think where we are now is, I mean, that's still an issue that we have to make some termination on. But we're at the number. I mean, legal's told us it's got to be the same number. So I guess the simple question is, what's the number? Joe?
Yeah. As you probably can tell from my tone here, we spent hours and hours and hours. We interviewed, I don't know how many people, I lost track. We had emails coming out our ears from students, from people who rent, from owners, different groups in town. We interviewed them all in roughly 2015. And the consensus we came up with, first of all, if it's not illegal, it's immoral to pick on students. So we agreed that the unrelated gave us some teeth to the statement that we were coming out with. And the reason we come up with 4, it was argued, there were a few people who wanted 3 at the time, Harold, of course, and it was agreed on that a lot of the homes have 4 bedrooms, and we'd come up with the number 4. But the point we'd made at the time, and what I was hopefully not upsetting this one, we don't enforce correctly. It doesn't make any difference whether you have 2 people or 7 people. I mean, if they're rowdy, if they're disturbing the neighborhood, they should be controlled. The owner of the property should be fined, and you can't rent anymore if he or she doesn't abide by the law. So we've got more people worked up about the number, whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever the number. That's not the issue. It's enforcement. If you have one boisterous student in that house who goes on social media, he can get 100 people there in, how many hours? And half of them aren't students, by the way. You know, it's let's have a party. Last meeting, I went out in the hallway, and then somebody came up to me and said, "You're going to have this meeting on this stuff." He said, "I can tell you where there are 10 places. They've got 8 students. They rent all the time to 8 students." So I said, "Well, thank you. It's a nice little tidbit. I know that if you just drive around the town on a Monday, Tuesday, you can just see the driveways full. Weekends don't count because people have other visitors. But this whole business of, I guess I'm gray-haired, and I think history tells the story. We got into this with the sign ordinance about parking, the same study 10 years later. We've done nothing with it. I mean, you got to do something. And the idea, for whatever reason, that the town council, I don't know what the politics are. I don't care. I never did. I'm surprised I'm still sitting on the board, right? I don't care. But someone is, for whatever reason, got the phone call we've got to make, from 4 to 3 because there's some reason for that. I don't know what the heck the reason is. It's enforcement that's the problem. And we've got all these letters and emails that we got. My colleagues got all it. But the last time we got, we had the student council in here. It was a huge number of people discussing this situation. That's how we came up with 4 unrelated persons. But we recommended at that time, I remember we talked about enforcement. Here we are today, 8 years later, talking about the same problem and talking numbers. You know, I'm not long for being on the board here. I've been here a long, long time. But I can't believe that in the future, the same subject is going to be talked about, and persons like you just stood up here and talked about frustrate them. I have family living in the North End in a busy area, and this goes on. I know what goes on in town, you know. In any case, I just, in terms of numbers, you can tell what I'm saying here. It makes no difference whether it's 4 or 3. They're asking us for some political reason to say 3. Why didn't they ask to change the law to say 4 unrelated? So now we're all on the same page. Why didn't they do that?
For a student, you mean? 4. Yeah.
4 unrelated. Well, I think isn't what they're asking about is 3 students to 3 unrelated?
Right.
Yeah. But they want 3.
They want 3.
To make the,
Right.
with no comment about we're going to enforce it. No comment. You can hear my frustration. I mean, just, you know, I live here. I've been here not my whole life, but, you know, I've been here for way over 50 years. You want something to happen so people aren't frustrated like this, you know?
All right.
In any case, you can
Thank
hear
you,
my
Joe.
frustration.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Brady?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last time we went through this was the 3-student ordinance, which in my opinion was an ordinance for the sake of being an ordinance. There's no enforcement process, there's no due process, there was no standards, there was no requirements. We don't have any kind of a registration system whatsoever. There's no accountability built into this. There was nothing codified as to how to deal with the students and what their responsibilities and what the consequences were. Nothing codified in the same factor for the landlords. It was just an ordinance to say we passed an ordinance. I opposed it. I voted in favor of it because basically, as the chair pointed out, it's a foregone conclusion. And if the town council wanted that, so be it. I've regretted that vote, and it sits sour in my mouth to this day. Now we're going to take that a step forward and redefine household and family. And again, it's an ordinance to be an ordinance. There is no rhyme or reason. Nothing is spelled out as to the whys, the hows. Again, there's no enforcement on this. There's nothing on the books that says, at least nothing that I saw in either ordinances or even requests, as to here's the registration process so we know who's in that house. We have licenses, we have phone numbers, we have this. This is the steps that we'll go through, 1, 2, and 3. This is the responsibility of the landlord. It's all codified. The responsibility to students codified. Responsibility, the consequences to the student, consequences to the landlord, because that's what this is all about. But the fact of the matter is, if we start redefining what a household is and family is, now we go beyond that. We go beyond the student. And I just see a lot in it. I'm not saying we as in me, the town council and the powers to be. Now they got to readdress other things. Again, it's an ordinance for the sake of an ordinance. That's not good law.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Brunetto?
Thank you. We good? I think everything's been said that on this subject. I mean, as we've said, for going on 7 years. I think it is enforcement. I agree with the doctor, Mr. Brady. And I don't see how the proposed amendment will promote the development of the town as contemplated in the comprehensive plan. And I also don't think it's good for the town to lose 400 beds from the available inventory. And I think that's all I really have to say on it.
Thank you, Mr. Brunetto. Mr. Friday?
So I imagine you might expect, I'm going to come at this from a different perspective. We all received 14 emails commenting on this proposal that said it's a taking of property rights, it's elitist, it makes Narragansett uninviting, makes Narragansett less diverse, mars Narragansett's reputation, will negatively impact small businesses. This issue has been going on for a long time. It's been 36 years since the 3 unrelated ordinance was adopted in 1987. And I think it's significant that nearly 50% of Rhode Island communities have 300 unrelated standard for single-family dwellings. And notably, our neighbors in South Kingstown, Charleston, and Westerly have 3 unrelated. It's the sort of South Coast has that standard. And I don't think anybody's saying that the 50% of the communities that have unrelated, or the 3 southern Rhode Island towns that have this, are all elitist, uninviting, negatively impacting small businesses. So I don't think that argument, it rings hollow to me. I think the change creates consistency with the 3-student ordinance, and this addresses a concern that many raised, that we were discriminating against students with the 3-student ordinance. It also addresses concerns that we heard when we were discussing the 3-student ordinance from residents who live in R40 and R80 neighborhoods with substandard lots. I think the change reduces financial incentives for real estate investors to drive up housing prices in Narragansett by purchasing single-family homes to create rental businesses. And I hope this will help to keep some of our single-family homes more affordable and help stabilize our population, reverse the recent trend of population loss, which is critical to sustain our small businesses. The change is consistent with the zoning ordinance, specifically Section 6, Use Code 06, taking of borders by resident family, provides up to 2 borders is permitted by right in all residential zones, and that's a consistency with this. The change is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Mr. DeLuca in his staff report states that none of the plan's policies incorporate a level of detail that speaks to the number of unrelated individuals who may inhabit a legal dwelling. And that's right on the nose. And I don't think the plan has detail that addresses the wording or meaning of any definition in the zoning ordinance. However, there's a strong thread through the plan for the need to promote more owner-occupied units and more families living in town. And LU 1C states specifically, review and update regulations in light of new legal developments. And I think this ordinance addresses that issue. So I'm supportive of it for those reasons.
Is that it, Mr. Friday?
Yep.
Thank you. I want to give my, I want to talk. I haven't talked yet. No.
After you talk,
I haven't given my opinion. We already had public comment. So when the board's done, I'll give you 5 minutes afterwards. After the vote? No, not after the vote, after the commentary. Jeez. So, what? Jeez. So again, I wish the council had sent us the legal opinion that it has to be the same and asked us what our opinion was. That would have been the proper thing to do, but that's this council. They're not doing what they should do, in my opinion. They're telling us what they want. They should ask us what the number is. And I respect the disagreement about the number, but the process galls me. This chafes at me because they should be asking the planning board for its objective opinion about what the issue is, given the legal decision that it has to be the same. Unlike, and of course, I totally agree about the enforcement, as always, but I have said from the start, I do think there needs to be a number. I think capping the number of people, unrelated and students, in a house, seasonal rentals, needs to occur. I just think when you set that bar, it does help mitigate to some degree the disruption that occurs in neighborhoods. And there's no question disruption occurs with students and unrelated summer rentals. So I think there needs, I've always said from the start, you can go back to whatever year we started this, Joe, I said there needs to be a number. I always thought it was 4. I'm not sure, I never agreed with 3. I think that's too restrictive. I think it's not draconian, but I think it's too stringent. I think 4 is the right number. I recognize that's just more than anything a gut feeling by anybody as to what the right number should be. But I think there needs to be a number. I think it's funny to go through all this data about 3 and 4 bedroom homes. So, you know, we all tell our stories about renting. While we were at URI, it was 3 years I rented in Narragansett each year, a 3-bedroom house, 4 kids one year, 5 kids another, 2 kids another. It never matches up to the bedroom. I understand where the 3 and 4 bedroom cut is to show what the inventory is, but the fact of the matter is you get renters at different numbers regardless of the number of bedrooms in the home. And I did talk to some realtors whose only vested interest is to sell homes, and they're well aware of what goes on in Narragansett. And this whole issue that if you set it at 3, it's going to provide 4-bedroom homes available to families to purchase. The people I talk to, they're still laughing about that because there's no connection to that at all. There's too many variables that go into house sales that to just say if I cut it at 3, it's going to provide an opportunity for families to buy 4-bedroom homes. And I think if somebody's renting to 4 students at $4,000 a month, for example, and it becomes 3, I think they're still going to get the 4,000. I mean, I think mom and dad are going to come up with the 300 extra for each kid, and they're still going to get the same amount of money. So I don't see all that. I think people aren't going to like this, but I think this whole policy has been driven by the neighborhood associations. I think they want to get the number as low as possible. I don't think we can go lower than 3 based on state law, correct, Mr. DeLuca? And
Yeah,
I think there are many people in town that would, if they could set it at 2 or 1 or 0, would do so. So I think the goal has been to get it to 3. Now we have to match the numbers, which, again, this board's been saying for years the numbers should match because it does appear to be biased to have different numbers. So other than what I think is right or what any of us think is right, I think the number should be 4. I think the students should come up to 4. I don't want people to say I don't think there should be an unlimited amount. I don't. From the beginning of this debate, I've said there should be a limit. It should be the same number, and I think the number should be 4. Now, what we have to, and we're not going to vote yet, but what we have to make a decision on is, and again, Steve and Mike, what's in front of us from the council is a referral for our recommendation to move the unrelated from 4 to 3. So we have to go up or down on that. We can provide any commentary to that we want, and Mike and Steve will pass that on to the council. And then we do need to make a determination of consistency with the comp plan, do we not, Mr. DeLuca?
Well, yeah.
I'm not asking for that vote yet, but
No.
we do have to do that, correct?
Yeah, this is, remember, it sounds like a very large, complicated ordinance. This is a definition of household, and the definition resides in the zoning ordinance. So as an amendment to the zoning ordinance, you have to give a reference to compliance with the comp plan, compliance with the intentions of the zoning ordinance as dictated by the state. You're supposed to address both of those things in your commentary to the council.
What's the issue?
We're looking at Section 21 of the zoning ordinance, which dictates certain things that the planning board should do in its report. So a statement of general consistency with the town comprehensive plan, demonstration and recognition of and consideration of each of the applicable purposes of zoning as presented to you. So there you have it.
Right, that's all in your staff review, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Joe, did you have something? Take the mic.
Yeah, just a quick two things. We have a number of emails, et cetera. I said that earlier, but they're all negative toward this business of what we're debating here in terms of
Yeah,
numbers.
excuse me, let me just for the public knows, we received between 10 and 15 emails over the last few days. All but one opposed dropping this to 3, one supported. And then we've had, obviously, the commentary here, so go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and the one was, of course, Harold. But the sad, this little sad note here, that one of the people in the email said, I can't sign my email because I'm afraid of retribution. And I thought, oh my God, retribution? I don't know, I just,
It's America, Joe.
I couldn't believe that. But in any case, that's just a little aside. Where have we gone, right?
Where have we gone? Okay. Sir, did you want to speak? You have 5 minutes. You've identified yourself. I'll keep the clock going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Zonfrillo. I'm at 7 Wynwood Circle. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out is that Narragansett did have a no more than 3 prior to this in 2016, and the number was moved for questionable reasons. It was supposedly because the 3 hadn't been enforced, but there were people that I think their agenda was to drive the 4. It didn't. I still haven't been able to figure out why, but it did get moved, so we have had a 3 in this town before. Second of all, you know, if Dr. O'Neill, you're talking about people being afraid in their emails, there's a lot of divisiveness, but I have to say it's not being driven by the neighborhood groups. A lot of the landlord groups have really personally attacked different members of these neighborhood groups and are really creating a rift in this town and blaming it back on the neighborhood groups. And the issue before you isn't whether you like the 3 or the 4, it's whether they should be consistent. And the chair had mentioned before that, you know, the problem he had was the inconsistency. So in order to protect the law, in order to protect the constitutional rights that, you know, is laid out by the solicitor, you must approve this. And you can put whatever comments you, in my opinion, you could put whatever comments you like about you don't like it, but it really is the decision that's before you. If you need it to be consistent, and you've stated it needs to be consistent, then this is what the council wants. And I think Mr. Friday has really eloquently talked about how 3 is a tradition down in southern New England, right? You know, we are not, these laws don't make Narragansett unfriendly, reducing the number. That's a lot of propaganda. And people play on fear, right? The landlord groups play on fear. In fact, if you talk to most residents, they say that they want the economics to change in this town. They want the incentives to change in this town. And I agree with the chair when he says, you know, it's not, this one factor is not going to, you know, change. More people are going to move into 4-bedroom houses. But right now, what's driving the valuations in Narragansett is commercial. Think about most places. Think about a Barrington or some other seaside community that doesn't have this huge, weird, perfect storm. We have a perfect storm of 9 months out of the year, and then the other 3 months out of the year, you can get exactly the same. You can get 2 years of revenue in 1 year. And the way it's been sold, it's guaranteed money. You know, load them up. Look at what happened in Eastwood Look. So these are all parts of the solution, and it's turning slowly. So I would please focus the debate back on what matters. What matters is what's driving the valuations in this town. And if you look, just as a very quick example, you know, if you look at a shopping mall, the money that's purchased in the money that a shopping mall might be worth, or a strip mall, is a function of the rents. It's a function of the rents. In fact, some people will buy a strip mall and they'll have a franchise of like a Planet Fitness. They'll lease the strip mall out to themselves, to the Planet Fitness of a 10-year, and all of a sudden the valuation of that mall goes up $1 million, and they can sell it overnight because of the contractual commitments and the revenue that can drive. The problem with Narragansett primarily isn't the students, it isn't the vacationers, it's the valuations are being driven in a residential area by commercial interests. And those commercial interests will say anything to create this, to keep this sure thing. It's a sure thing. Remember Dunkin' Donuts? You used to be able to go to the bank, and if you had a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, they would just give you the money because they knew it was a sure thing. We have to take the certainty out of it. This is not about prejudice or bias. Those are all red herrings that are going to be used to distract us from trying to steer Narragansett back to valuations that are based on families, not on commercial interests. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are faced with an up or down on what's been referred to us. With all due respect that people have spoken, I think if we're in opposition to what's been referred to us, we can certainly, either by implication or state as an aside, that if the student was raised to 4, that would satisfy the consistency, which seems to me to be the only thing in front of us. Again, the council sending us what they want doesn't mean we have to agree to it, but we all agree that it needs to be consistent. We've been saying it for years. So let's make the number the same, but we do have to actually make a motion relative to what specifically has been sent to us. I guess it's two-part, Mike. It's consistency with the comp plan and zoning as enumerated in your memo.
Yeah, you could break it down into two. Typically, we just take one vote based on what's written in my staff report, but in this particular case, I have drawn a conclusion that that there is nothing between the number 3 and 4 that is directly relevant to a particular policy of the comprehensive plan. With all due respect to Rupert's interpretation, and I've read that particular policy also, it doesn't state that we have to address the number of unrelated people living in a home. All it states is we have to consider,
Right.
Amendments to local regulatory provisions that will advance the town. That's a very conceptual concept, very, kind of general concept, I should say. And if you feel as though there is a line to be drawn between these things, then you would say, yes, this proposal is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. My read on it is that it's not out of compliance.
Right.
And the semantical interpretation there is, I can't prove to you that it is in compliance with the comprehensive plan.
Let me interrupt. So I think, if you folks remember, when we were doing the 3 student, I voted against compliance with the comp plan for the reason that it was treating the 2 populations differently. And that was, in my view, inconsistent. There were a number of citations that treated seasonal rentals together, which included students in summer, and we were giving them a different treatment. So I voted against it. I wouldn't vote against this being consistent with the comp plan if we bring the number together. That's why, but there's a second part of this as to what we think.
Right.
up or down on what they've referred to us. So we could vote that it's not inconsistent with the comp plan, because they are bringing numbers together. I'd be happy to do that. I'm not going to vote for what they referred to us.
Right, right. And we've had that kind of circumstance happen in the past
Yeah.
where completely different sorts of common topic areas where you can say, and many times when you're looking at zoning cases, you'll say, yeah, it is in compliance with zoning, with the comprehensive plan, because you got a single-family home in a single-family zone, but this giant addition this person wants to build and, encroach upon his rear yard setback is a bit too much, and we recommend denial. So you can find in compliance with the comp plan and still not agree with the outcome or the content of the request itself. This is not that much different from, if you were to be opposed to it, an excessive zoning variance case. I'm not saying it is excessive, I'm just
Yeah.
saying
Okay.
you can draw that conclusion at the comprehensive plan level and not feel encumbered in the way that you vote on the content.
And I think that's true. So is that two motions then?
I guess in this case, you might want to do it that way.
Steve, are you okay
Because
with that?
my staff report is very neutral on this.
Right.
Usually I'm telling you it either is or it isn't. Today, I'm telling you
It's not inconsistent.
it's not inconsistent.
Yeah, right.
And what
So-
we're voting-
Which is kind of the same as saying it is consistent, sort of.
What we're voting is just a recommendation of the council will decide what they want to do.
Well, yeah, but,
They've already told us what they're.
but, they've already told us.
I
what
got that one.
But I think the comp plan consistency, the consistency with zoning, that's an important vote. And again, I'm not opposed, I agree with Mr. DeLuca, it's not inconsistent now, that the numbers are brought together. So that's one vote. And then the second vote is the specific referral from the council, which is to move the unrelated number from 4 to 3. So I'll leave it up to you gentlemen to take a stab at what you want. I'd like two motions, though. Don't be shy.
Go for it. I love your pause.
Go ahead, Mark. It's that vote's still tasting in your mouth, so
Yeah.
let's see what you do on this.
So I would like to first move that the aforementioned zoning amendment to increase the number of unrelated individuals who can make up a household is compliant with the comprehensive plan, and I would refer to staff's findings, page 1, number 1, household definition, page 2, consistency with comprehensive plan, continued on page 3, and page 4, and summarized in the conclusion of the staff.
So that's consistency with the comp plan and
Yes.
and zoning.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a motion by Mr. Brady, second by Dr. Neal. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. And then, Mr. Brady, do you have a motion on the specific referral from the council?
Yeah, I would move staff reports, the request for zoning text amendment, increasing the number, moving the number of individuals who can make up, quote-unquote, a household, which equals a dwelling, from 4 to 3. I would move that in the negative. Reason being is it is an ordinance in shell only. There is no, again, consistent with the last one, there is no enforcement, there's no process, there's no standards, there's no requirements, there's no accountability to either students, renters, summer dwellers, landlords. I think households can be, in today's world, a mixture of a lot of different things. So I move in the negative.
Well, okay, before we move this, so, but is there some, I think we've affirmed for the council, or at least you have, and we voted that the number should be the same, right?
Yes.
So now you're making a motion not to recommend that the 4 be brought to 3.
No,
So, Steve, I need some help here. So that's what we have to do, up or down on that, but is the implication, will the council have the perception to understand what the next step is without us saying it? Can we say it?
Well, I mean, you can, in your vote, you can make a recommendation that
The
other,
student be brought to fore.
yeah, so the implication of that would be that this would be tabled and that a separate ordinance would be brought forward with the student. But, you know, you can
But
certainly.
because we agree with the consistency between the numbers, if we don't agree with one going one way, the other has to, so Mark,
I mean, you're limited in your charge,
right,
and, you know, certainly you can make
we
commentary.
can make
on that,
commentary.
But your
So
charge is.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Why?
Well, because you're saying I got to start over,
Yeah, you got to start over.
and that I cannot
Well,
No,
forward a
no,
negative.
you can,
I
you
mean, it
can,
hasn't even been seconded yet, so.
well, Joe did,
Oh, Joe did, okay.
He snuck it in.
but, no, but you can recommend against moving it to 3,
Yeah,
which you did.
which I did.
Correct.
But is there any, do you want to give the council any direction of how, because it is incongruent with what we're doing with the comp plan, which is they both have to be the same number. I don't know. I'm struggling here because,
I mean, that's the motion, I believe.
I've laid out why I think it's negative. And the reason being is, it's not the number. I mean, I think
All
there
right.
should be.
I think
hold
he
on,
did- yeah,
Hold
he-
on, let
he-
me explain myself. I think there should be a number. What it is can be debated. But the fact of the matter is, the ordinances, this one and the last, are paper ordinance. They're ordinances for the sake of voting ordinances. When we pass an ordinance, we have standards that we set. We have enforcement standards. We have requirements, actionable requirements. We have accountability. We have enforcement. We have penalties. None of that exists here. And that's why I'm voting in the negative.
And that's,
and that's been
That's a
seconded by
motion.
Dr.
Correct.
O'Neill. Now, does anyone want to offer amendments to that? If not, we'll take a vote.
Well, you have to. It seems as though, Mr. Brady, and I wouldn't put words in his mouth, it seems as though he doesn't necessarily want to expand the thoughts
Right.
beyond. His feeling about this is very well described. You could, in fact, offer suggestions as to how to make it a better ordinance as an outside note. I'm not sure if that would be inappropriate or not, but, not a vote, but a note that explaining what's going on right now. You know, there's a struggle here. There's a struggle in trying to bring the numbers into balance, the 3-student ordinance, which is an ordinance unto itself, and the household definition, which is nothing more than a definition. And to be able to say that you want to see balance, the lower of the two numbers is not of acceptable or the preferred number, and that you would want to have a higher number, that being 4. Now, I don't know if the group is unanimous toward that or not.
That's not the motion
And so,
That's what I'm saying. I'm willing
Yeah.
to, I'll pull my motion off the table.
No,
If the goat goes in another direction.
no, I mean,
But-
you've made your motion, it's been seconded by Dr. O'Neill. I think we need to vote on that. I think what's left hanging is if a majority of the board feels that the student should be brought up, that we agree with consistency, that's not being stated in anything, and council will have to, make its interpretation based on what we say.
Which they're gonna anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to avoid that whole discussion, obviously.
okay.
So if Mr. Brady's motion is seconded by Dr. O'Neill, then I will take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Aye. Opposed? No. So Mr. Brady's motion passes 4-1. Thank you. And I just need a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Brady, second by Mr. Burnett. All those in favor?